It was the 5th year since I separated from Elias. He ran into me walking past his luxury car with a child in my hand. So you went ahead and gave birth on your own because you thought I'd definitely raise it? The child isn't yours, I kindly reminded him. He let out a cold laugh and blocked my way with his car, still talking tough. That very night, I was taken into his villa. He bought my daughter the most expensive toys and hired the best nanny. Until half a year later, a paternity test result appeared in his hand. He gripped the report and looked at me, his voice hoarse and shattered. The child really isn't mine? I told you a long time ago, I said with an innocent look. He was silent for a long while, then crumpled the report into a ball. It doesn't matter, he said. If I say she is, then she is. Chapter 1. Early winter. Holding my daughter's hand, I hurried toward the children's hospital. Today was the day she was supposed to get her vaccine. As we passed that black Bentley, which I had no idea when it had stopped there, I instinctively pulled her a little closer to my side. Just then, a well-dressed middle-aged driver quickly got out of the car and stepped in front of me. Miss Julia, Elias would like to invite you into the car for a talk. My steps halted, and I was a little slow to react. Which Elias? I don't know him. I rejected it almost on instinct, not letting my gaze linger on the pitch-black car window. I tried to sidestep around him, but the driver still blocked me politely. Then I heard a soft click, and the rear window rolled down halfway right before my eyes. Behind the window, a familiar face that also felt like it belonged to another lifetime appeared. It was Elias. He looked even colder than he had 5 years ago, the line of his profile drawn tight in the shadows inside the car. His gaze swept over, paused on my face for a moment, then sank heavily onto the little figure by my leg. So you went ahead and gave birth on your own because you thought I'd definitely raise it? I lifted my head and met his eyes. The child isn't yours, he chuckled softly, still talking tough. At that moment, my daughter tilted up her little face. At her height, all she could see was that glossy black body of the car in front of her, like a huge wall. So she hugged my leg more tightly in fear and whimpered softly. Mommy, I comforted her. Okay, let's go now. But after only a few steps, the engine behind us started with a low rumble. The car slowly glided past us, then stopped diagonally in front of us, blocking the road. Elias finally got out of the car. The black overcoat he wore, perfectly tailored, brought an invisible sense of pressure, and my daughter instinctively shrank a little behind me. He walked straight up to us, his gaze lingering on my daughter, who was clinging tightly to me, with a complicated look in his eyes. Her eyes and mouth both look like you. That's what everyone says. I tugged at the corner of my mouth. Of course my daughter looks like me. He lifted his eyes and looked at me again. Too many emotions were surging in that gaze. Scrutiny, mockery, and a trace of restrained turbulence. Have you been telling people outside that the child's father is dead? I nodded. Yes, he died a long time ago. Elias said nothing. He only wore an expression that seemed to say, let's see how long you can keep this act up. After a brief silence, he slowly said that sentence, you've already brought the person right in front of me. Could I really refuse to raise her? I stared at him in shock. It felt as if the wind had stopped at that very moment. Chapter 2. I got together with Elias when I was 21. Because of me, he canceled the marriage alliance his family had arranged for him. After the news spread, everyone said I was lucky. A part-time student working as a foreign language interpreter at an art exhibition had actually managed to get with Elias, and even made him cancel his engagement. But it was only much later that I understood. His resistance back then, rather than being for me, was more because Elias at that age was unwilling to be bound by any person or anything. We were together for 3 years, until Nicole, the wealthy heiress whose engagement he had canceled, returned to the country. She smiled radiantly, surrounded by people at the center of the room. People couldn't help comparing us. So that's the one Elias is keeping? Pretty bland. Now that Nicole is back, the contrast is brutal. She can't compare in a single way. Elias knows exactly what he's doing. He was just playing around. Anyone who took it seriously is a fool. When I wanted to leave, Elias personally led me in front of Nicole, my fiancée. Julia. Nicole's gaze measured me like a ruler. She smiled faintly. I've often heard Elias mention you. You really are very well-behaved. Low laughter full of tacit understanding rose all around us. All evening, they talked about things I couldn't understand. Nicole also spoke about the multinational project she was leading, glowing with confidence. As Elias looked at her, there was admiration in his eyes that I had never seen before. At the end of the gathering, Nicole joked with Elias, "You really are too soft-hearted. You pick up every stray cat and dog and keep them by your side." Elias didn't refute her, he just smiled. "You're the impressive one." After the gathering ended, the air inside the car turned stagnant. Elias saw through my mood. I broke off the engagement first. So she's holding a grudge. What's wrong with letting her have a few words for appearance's sake? He looked over at me as the lights outside slid across his expressionless face. I said nothing and lowered my head. My phone screen was lit up with a message from my mother. "It's almost New Year's. When are you coming back?" My fingers moved, and I replied, "Tonight." I put away my phone. "Elias," I said, "I'm not going on next week's vacation." His eyes darkened a little. "What are you making a fuss about?" "I'm not making a fuss. I want to go home for the new year." He was silent for a few seconds. Then his voice turned cold. "Do whatever you want." That night, I boarded the train. As the carriage swayed, I sent him the last message, "Let's break up." Elias didn't reply. A whole new year passed. I called him. The phone rang once, and he picked up. "Thought it through?" It was as if he had been waiting for it. "If you want to come back, I can consider it." "No," I said. "I want to go back and pack up the things I left at your place." He was silent for quite a long time. "When?" "Tomorrow." Chapter 3. The next morning, I went over there carrying an empty suitcase. At that hour, Elias should have been at the office, but he was at home, and wherever I went, he followed. "I'm not stealing your stuff," Elias said. "You're an eyesore here. Don't worry, I won't show up again in the future." His expression turned even darker. After I moved back to my hometown for good, I found a job very quickly. Once I started my new life, my family and friends began arranging blind dates for me. I didn't resist it. As for the place where I had lived before, I never went back. But every now and then, I would see news online saying that the relationship between their two families had worsened again. For unknown reasons, I closed the news and continued with my own business. After everything settled down, I rented an old apartment in a residential compound near my company. Security in the compound was lax, with only a security guard in his 50s. It was probably more than 6 months after I moved in that he stopped me just as I got back from work. "Julia, your boyfriend came by looking for you." I froze for a moment before realizing he was probably referring to my new boyfriend, Pablo. Pablo sometimes drove me home. The guard recognized him. But why didn't Pablo contact me directly? Just as I was thinking that, his call came through. "Are you free tomorrow night? A coworker recommended a mountain resort. They say the fish there is especially authentic. Want to go try it?" Holding my phone, the corners of my mouth lifted unconsciously. "Sure, I just happen to have nothing going on tomorrow night." On the other end, Pablo also seemed very happy. He told me that besides the food, the scenery there was beautiful too. I listened, responding now and then, as I slowly walked toward the entrance of my building. Then I saw him. Under the dim hallway light, a figure was leaning against my door. Through those eyes streaked with red veins, I saw the expression on my own face. Utterly sweet and gentle, clearly the look of someone in the honeymoon phase of love. But in Elias's eyes, it became especially glaring. The way he stood at my doorway made him look like he had come to catch me cheating. His expensive suit jacket was hanging from one hand. Even his usually immaculate tie was hanging loose, as if he had yanked at it many times in irritation. His gaze moved slowly from my face to the phone by my ear, not stopping until I hung up. When I walked closer, he stepped aside and left me space to open the door. In the moment I hesitated, he followed me into the apartment. A strong smell of alcohol rushed at me. He had been drinking. When he hugged me from behind, his breath fell hot against my ear. His voice slurred and unclear. "Is the fish good?" "I haven't had it yet. I'll try it tomorrow." He tightened his arms even more. "You really plan to go?" "Yes, I'm going on a date." Elias slowly, very slowly, let go of me. "A date." He repeated those two words. Then he nodded. Go ahead. But Julia, once you've had your fun, remember to come back. A smile without warmth curled at his lips. In the end, I'm still the only one who'll have room for you. But the very next day, I immediately terminated the lease. Not long after, Pablo was assigned overseas, and I went abroad with him, without a trace. And now, it had been exactly 5 years. Chapter 4. After the vaccination was done. That sharply lined Bentley was still parked outside. Elias leaned against the car. After we walked over, he bent slightly and crouched down, his gaze landing level with my daughter's. What's your name? Elias's voice was deliberately softer than before. The strange uncle who had been icy just now had suddenly changed his attitude, and the contrast left my daughter a little at a loss. But she still answered politely. Hello, uncle. My name is Sophia. Sophia. Elias repeated it once, his tone very light. He didn't ask anything else. He simply stood up and gave a look behind me. The driver immediately stepped forward, now holding 2 exquisite gift boxes. One contained a blonde doll wearing a gorgeous puffy dress. The other held a fluffy snow-white rabbit plush. Elias held them out in front of Sophia. Sophia looked up at me. Only after seeing me give a slight nod did she reach out and hug the rabbit gift box. She couldn't free a hand to take the other one. Quite naturally, Elias kept the one Sophia couldn't carry in his own hand. I'll drive you. I'll give it to her when we get there. In the car, Sophia hugged her new companion and curiously looked around at the luxurious interior. Elias's gaze fell outside the window from time to time, then swept over the quiet child. He asked some things about Sophia, when her birthday was, which kindergarten she was attending now, what she usually liked to eat. Her birthday is August 30th. She's a little over 4 years old. I'm looking for a kindergarten for her. I just took her to an interview yesterday. She likes picture books, and she also likes the little animals and cartoons. She's not much of a picky eater. He asked one question, and I answered one. The car finally stopped in front of a 3-story villa set in a quiet environment. It was very new and tidy inside, but there was no real sense of life there, as if no one usually stayed in it. As we stepped into the spacious living room, Elias's tone returned to its original lofty coldness. What I can give is just a place to settle in. Don't expect anything else. I glanced at the phone in my hand, which was vibrating non-stop. Several messages had popped up on the screen. At the very top was one from Sophia's grandfather on her mother's side. Your mother's blood pressure shot up again, and we just took her to the hospital. The doctor said she needs to be observed for a few days. Don't let her exert herself before things stabilize. As for Sophia, you'll have to figure out a way to manage on your own for now. Right after that was a notice from the daycare supervisor. Hello, Sophia's mother. We are very sorry to inform you that due to internal adjustments, our center will be temporarily closed starting next week. The reopening date will be announced later. Thank you for your understanding and support. Elias took in my slight change of expression in full, but he had clearly misunderstood the reason. You think it's too little? Then I'm really disappointing you. Aside from the necessary servants and nanny, there won't be anything else. It's enough. He raised a brow and looked at me. This already solves my biggest problem. I explained to him. I work during the day, do literary translation for a publishing house at night, and sometimes teach substitute classes at a training center on weekends. I have very little time to spend with Sophia. Elias said coldly. Even if you think it's not enough, I still won't give you anything more. I nodded. That very night, the servants not only brought daily necessities, but also moved in several large boxes of toys. There was a castle made of building blocks, a little play kitchen, and colorful plush toys. Sophia's eyes lit up all at once. Before long, she had built a little castle using the blocks and plush toys. When she came out of the castle, she finally remembered to ask me, Mommy, who is that uncle? An old friend of Mommy's. He saw that we ran into some difficulties and was willing to help us. Oh, then I'll thank Uncle tomorrow. I smiled. He rarely comes by. You can thank him when you run into him. But that night, I had just gotten Sophia to sleep, when the sound of a car engine shutting off came from downstairs, followed by the beep of the keypad lock opening. It had been less than 2 days, and Elias had already come over this quickly. His coat was draped over his arm, carrying the chill of the night wind with him. When he came upstairs, The cartoon Sophia had been watching before bed still hadn't been turned off. The ending song of Puppy Park was playing on the screen, with a group of fluffy puppies rolling around on the grass. Sophia actually hadn't been sleeping deeply. Hearing the noise, she rubbed her eyes and poked her head out from the bedroom doorway, looking drowsily at the screen and then at this uncle who had suddenly appeared. Elias suddenly asked Sophia, "Do you like dogs?" Sophia nodded vaguely and said in a small voice, "Puppies, cute. Do you want one?" He asked again. My heart jumped, and I quickly said, "No need. She's too young. She can't walk one." Elias turned his head and swept a blank look over me. "There's no maid in the house?" I pressed my lips together, and when Sophia heard about having a puppy, her eyes instantly lit up. All traces of sleepiness vanished. Clutching the door frame, she looked at me expectantly, then at him. "I want one." "All right," Elias answered, and then said to Sophia, "You'll have a puppy." Chapter 5. As soon as the words left his mouth, he turned and walked toward the study, already starting to make calls. I heard him give his assistant brief instructions. "Tomorrow, arrange for someone to select a gentle dog breed suitable for a small child, and also prepare pet supplies and contact a dog trainer for home visits." After he hung up, I followed him to the doorway of the study. "You really don't need to get her so many more things. What she has now is already enough." Before I could finish, he turned around, grabbed my wrist in one swift motion, and pinned me against the wall by the door. He bent down close, and in those eyes surged an agitation that was hard to put into words. "Julia, do you really think this is interesting? You deliberately brought the child right in front of me just because you wanted more, didn't you? If that's what you wanted, then why didn't you show up when you had just given birth to her? If you had come straight to me back then, wouldn't you have gotten exactly what you wanted? Why wait until today?" I looked at him. "When I gave birth to her, I wasn't in the country. Pablo and I." As if that name had stabbed him, Elias cut me off at once. "So to avoid me, you hid overseas. Is that it?" For a moment, I was speechless. I remembered that hurried stretch of time. Back then, I had agreed to go abroad with Pablo. Part of it was because I felt our relationship was stable, but also because I wanted to get as far away from Elias as possible, to a place where he probably wouldn't be able to find me, and wouldn't care enough to spend the effort looking. That momentary pause and the complicated emotions that flashed through my eyes were clearly caught by Elias. As if his suspicions had just been confirmed, his breathing suddenly grew heavier. Only then did his gaze drop to my lips. It was almost the posture of someone about to kiss me, carrying the reckless impulse of someone who had already smashed the last pot. But in the very instant he lowered his head, he stopped himself abruptly, as if some remnant of reason had yanked him back. He suddenly released the hand that had been trapping me. "I already told you, the only things I can give you are a place to stay and basic care." His expression returned to its usual coldness and distance. "As for anything else, don't even think about it. I definitely won't give it to you, especially marriage." On those final two words, he deliberately put extra weight into his voice. Marriage? How had his mind gone there? I had never thought about getting married again. After Pablo died in the accident, the main question in my life became how to raise my daughter on my own. Because Pablo was an only child, I left the larger share of the inheritance to his parents. I only kept a portion for myself. Actually, it was not a small amount, but I just wanted very, very badly to give Sophia the best possible life. That was why I threw myself into work with all my heart, and it was also why I accepted Elias's charity without a second thought. Even if, in his eyes, it was a form of humiliation toward me, but I thought he was overthinking it. Compared with Sophia getting better care, a few cold words were not worth mentioning. Still, before going to bed, I looked up Elias's recent situation. His information was all over the internet. It popped up the moment I searched. 32 years old, unmarried, with his family background. There was no way there had been absolutely no movement around him all these years. He must have scared everyone off. Chapter 6. The puppy was delivered to the villa 3 days later. It was a small, snow-white Bichon Frise, round and fluffy, with a very gentle temperament. Sophia had originally wanted to name it Sophia, but Elias told her there was already a Sophia in the house. So after thinking it over, she decided to call it Roma. She liked Roma very much. Every afternoon, the first thing she did after coming back from kindergarten was take it out for a walk, with the nanny following closely every step of the way. I felt at ease letting her go. At dusk, I was in the kitchen handling chicken breast, broccoli, and carrots, planning to make a meal for Roma. The sound of chopping meat drowned out the movement outside the door. Not until a cold voice sounded at the kitchen doorway. Julia, you don't need to run around this much trying to curry favor with me. I turned around. Elias was standing at the kitchen door, with a faint trace of mockery hanging at the corner of his mouth. I'm not buying it. My hand paused, the blade stopping on the chopped chicken breast. Under his gaze, I awkwardly poured the diced chicken and chopped vegetables together into the little dog bowl beside the sink, the one printed with cartoon paw prints. The air went silent for a few seconds. Elias's face turned green, then pale, at a speed visible to the naked eye. He drew a deep breath. Is there no one in this house to do the work? Why are you making food for the dog yourself? I just happen to have some free time, I said, a little embarrassed. By the way, I'm about to make food for someone now. Do you want any? Elias stared at me for a moment. Only after a long pause did he spit out 2 words, obviously. I simply made 2 portions of avocado salad. Just as I set them on the table, there was a noise at the entrance. Sophia came running in, leading Roma by the leash. Her little face flushed red. Mommy, Uncle! She greeted us one by one. Roma still wasn't familiar with Elias's scent. Curious, it trotted over to his legs, its wet nose lightly sniffing at the hem of his trousers. Elias's brows immediately knitted together, and he even leaned his body back a little. I don't like dogs. Take it away. But Sophia only understood the word hold. The little girl immediately bent down, struggled to scoop up the fluffy bundle, and staggered toward Elias, trying to stuff it into his arms. Here, Uncle. Hold it. The disgust on Elias's face was practically spilling over. Sophia, I quickly said. Uncle doesn't like dog fur getting on him. Put it down. Sophia let out an "oh," then paused, a little confused. At that moment, however, Elias suddenly reached out and took Roma, who had been held up in midair. Then he settled it into the crook of his arm. He looked at me. Don't think you know me that well either. I shrugged. Sophia, on the other hand, lifted her little face and very seriously chimed in. I know Uncle very well. Elias froze for a moment. He lowered his head to look at her, and the tension in his expression softened without him realizing it. Oh, what do you know? Counting on her fingers, Sophia listed everything clearly. One by one, Uncle comes to see me every Tuesday and Friday night. Last time he brought strawberry cake and princess shoes that light up. The time before that, it was a drawing board and paintbrushes. But I got the wall dirty. Uncle also has driver Uncle play songs in the car. Chapter 7. With every point she listed, Elias's gaze softened a little more. He carefully handed Roma back to Sophia, his movements even gentler than when he had taken the dog just moments before. As Sophia took Roma and turned to run off to play, he suddenly bent down and lightly wrapped an arm around the little girl's shoulders. It was a hug so brief it barely counted as one. Go play. That night, Elias stayed very late. He even spent some time after dinner sitting with Sophia on the living room carpet, building blocks with her in an easy, relaxed posture. Only after Sophia was taken away by the nanny, rubbing her eyes and heading off for her bath and bedtime, did the villa grow quiet again. When I stepped out of Sophia's room, Elias's voice came from the direction of the sofa. Marriage isn't impossible either. He paused, his gaze resting on the heavy night outside the window, the lines of his profile looking somewhat blurred in the dim light. I mean, between you and me. I stopped in my tracks and stared at him blankly, unable to process it for a moment. The next second, almost instinctively, I shook my head. Elias clearly saw that shake of my head, as well as the undisguised astonishment on my face. The trace of tenderness that had flashed in his eyes froze instantly. Fine, let's see how long you can keep pretending. I took the chance to bring something up. My mom has been doing much better lately. She said that after a while, she'll be able to come help. Once she arrives, I'll move back with Sophia. How old is your mother? Can she handle all that strain? There are maids and a nanny here. Let professionals do professional work. That's what's best for the child. Stop coming up with impulsive ideas. After being lectured like that, I was left somewhat dazed. Elias also realized that his reaction had been a bit excessive. So he said, "Julia, stop playing hard to get." He looked away. "At most, I can come 2 extra days a week." The very next day was Saturday, and he really did come. He was dressed in casual clothes. "The weather's nice today," he said to Sophia, who was eating breakfast. "I'll take you to the park." Sophia jumped down from her chair, went to fetch Roma, and happily went out with him. They were gone for a long time. By noon, only the nanny brought Sophia back. "Did he go back to the office?" I asked the nanny. "Apparently not. Something happened on the way." She said that when they were returning to the villa district, they ran into one of Elias's cousins. The cousin asked who the little girl Elias was holding by the hand was. Elias directly said that she was his daughter and that he had only just acknowledged her recently. Then the cousin's expression darkened, and he said several unpleasant things. So Elias had the nanny bring Sophia back first. Hearing that Elias had acknowledged Sophia as his daughter in front of others, I couldn't help feeling a little surprised. As I was still trying to figure out what he was planning, I heard movement at the door. Elias had returned, his face dark and grim, as if he had just argued with someone. He had only just stepped inside when the door was knocked on again. It was Elias's assistant. The assistant handed over a file. "Boss, the results from the lab just came out." Elias took it and casually set it on the table, then said to me, "I have to go back to the family estate tonight." His tone carried a resolve that had already been made up. "I prepared this move a long time ago. If anyone dares gossip again, I'll slap this thing right in their face." As he spoke, he picked up the file, tore it open decisively, and pulled out the thin sheet inside. His eyes, out of habit, swept straight to the conclusion box at the bottom, and he read it aloud without thinking. Based on the DNA analysis results, Elias is excluded as Sophia's biological father. Chapter 8. The paper crackled under the pressure of his fingers. He frowned and stared at those few lines. It was as if he couldn't understand them, or as if he wanted to stare right through them. After a long while, he finally forced out a sentence from his throat. "It's fake, right? Of course you and her wouldn't show a parent-child relationship. If you switched in Pablo, then it would." Hearing that name again, Elias lifted his head, his eyes filled with chaotic shock. Not long after he was posted overseas, I got pregnant, but when Sophia was 1 year old, he got into a car accident. The other driver fled the scene, and the rescue window was missed. I raised her by myself for several years. We only came back when it was time for her to start kindergarten. Still gripping the paternity report, the veins on the back of Elias's hand suddenly stood out. He opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, but what came out first was a ragged breath. "The child really is your late husband's?" Those cold, sharp eyes were now completely red, locked tightly onto me. Seeing how violently he was reacting, I blinked in confusion. "Huh? So you actually didn't know? Didn't I say the child's father was dead?" Elias looked as if that sentence had completely choked him. Only after a long time did he speak. "You did say the child's father was dead." He stared at me. "I thought, because you hated me, you were cursing me. And also, the night I went to find you in your hometown, at your house, didn't you and I? Otherwise, why did you take my clothes off?" "That night?" I frowned, trying hard to recall that night 5 years ago. Only after quite a while did those blurred fragments become clear again. That night, after he talked to me, he never left either. Alcohol had eaten away at his awareness, which made him pass out directly in my room. "You wanted water, so I poured you some. But you kept pulling at me and the water spilled all over your clothes. I was afraid you'd catch cold wearing wet clothes, so I helped you take them off. That was all." After I finished speaking, the doubts that had surfaced in my mind over the past few days suddenly connected all at once. So that was why he had been so devoted to Sophia these past few months, and why he had even said he could give me marriage, because he had been absolutely certain that Sophia carried half of his blood. He thought I had left him for 5 years out of anger, that I was using a child to raise my own value, and that once the time was right, I would come back and force my way into his life, even knowing there was a new man by my side. He had only assumed it was an act put on for him. Because I, Julia, would only bear a child for him, a child for Elias. In the silence, Elias turned his back and stood facing the floor-to-ceiling windows for a while, until the nanny suddenly appeared. She didn't notice the strange atmosphere in the room. She simply, out of habit, reported to Elias. Elias. Sophia coughed a couple more times just now. If she makes a fuss about wanting cake tonight, you absolutely mustn't give in to her. Elias turned around, and when he spoke, his voice was a little hoarse. No cake. Steam her some pear with rock sugar or something. You take care of it. After the nanny acknowledged him and left, I stepped forward too. Elias. I called him as well. I'm taking Sophia and leaving later. After a pause, I added, also, Roma, can you let us take her with us? Elias looked at me for a long time, so long that I almost thought he would explode, or have bodyguards escort us out, until I heard him say, why are you leaving? Sophia should stay here. You saw the result. She isn't your daughter. Elias crumpled the paper into a ball. If I say she is, then she is, even if she isn't. Who says I'm only allowed to raise my own child? If it's not my own child, does that mean I can't raise her? Me? Chapter 9. I packed my things. In the middle of the night, I ran away with a child and a dog. I didn't get very far. I just went back to the place where I used to live. But Elias still showed up in this neither too big nor too small 3-bedroom apartment. He was holding a file that looked strangely familiar. When he found his way here, there were faint dark circles under his eyes. Before he could finish, he had already placed that file on the dining table and pushed it toward me. I opened it. Black words on white paper. The heading was still from a testing agency, but not the same one as last time. The result in the conclusion box said that Elias and Sophia had a biological parent-child relationship. My eyes widened, and I looked up at him. Only a lunatic would forge a paternity test. Elias's expression didn't change. Who forged it? This one is the real one, he said. The previous one was a mistake on the lab side, so I changed to another agency. So, Julia, the three of us are still the same as before. I looked at him, my expression complicated. Before, I didn't know you were treating Sophia as your own daughter. I thought you were just giving me charity, and that after enough charity, sooner or later I'd be crying and begging you to come back. He cut me off. If it were charity, you would never accept it. I've known you for many years. You would never take even the slightest grievance. So the only explanation is that you sincerely wanted to come back to my side. Because I've changed. I met his gaze. I'm snobbish and worldly now. If a bargain is handed right to my face, of course I'm not going to pass it up. I said softly. So you misjudged me. After hearing that, Elias didn't get angry. He even laughed very lightly, picked up that outrageously fake paternity report from the table, and waved it in front of my eyes. What kind of bargain is that? His voice was steady, matter of fact. Raising my own daughter, isn't that only right? Can someone please do something about him? Elias continued. What do you and Sophia want to eat? I'll have the nanny come cook. His tone was so natural, as if this were his home. Sophia came out of the room, rubbing her eyes. Elias stopped in the middle of dialing his phone and walked over to ask her, do you want to go back to Uncle's place? There are lots of fun things there, right? Sophia thought for a moment and answered, Mommy used to take me to Disneyland too. You have to buy a ticket, and when time is up, you have to leave. Uncle's place is also an amusement park. Now the ticket time is over, so it's time to go home. Elias's whole body stiffened slightly. Just then, the door lock turned, and my mother came back carrying a basket of groceries. Grandma! Sophia immediately threw herself at her. While changing her shoes, my mother looked up, and only then did she notice the unfamiliar man in the living room. She froze for a moment. And this is... Elias hesitated for a second. Hello, Auntie. I'm Pablo's friend. I came to see the child. A trace of sorrow immediately appeared in my mother's eyes. Pablo was such a sensible child. I never thought his friends would be this thoughtful too. She sighed, her tone full of reminiscence. If only he were still here. He was so considerate. I never once saw the two of them argue or even raise their voices. When Julia was in postpartum recovery, He took 2 months off to take care of her and never let Julia stay up all night even once. Elias listened in silence. Mom, aren't these vegetable roots a little too old? They're hard to pick through. Really? Let me see. My mother's attention was successfully diverted. But at that moment, Elias stepped forward. I'll do it. The kitchen instantly felt cramped because of his presence. He rolled up his shirt sleeves, his movements awkward and unfamiliar. Elias stayed for this meal. The atmosphere carried a strange kind of harmony. My mother warmly put food into his bowl. Sophia chirped away about kindergarten, and he listened with full attention. After the meal, I walked him downstairs. He was about to say something when his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and stepped aside to answer it. The voice on the other end came faintly through. A stern male voice. I heard about your situation. If it really is our family's child, then bring her back for us to see. Don't let things stay improper out there. Elias listened in silence. After a long while, he only replied with one sentence, I know what I'm doing. The call ended. I walked over. I still need to thank you, even though it was all a misunderstanding. These past 6 months, you really did help me solve quite a lot of trouble. Elias looked at me. The streetlight fell into his eyes, reflecting the struggle inside them. I'll handle things on my family's side. No one will come bother you. He paused. Pablo, was he very good to you? I thought about it, then nodded. He was silent for a very long time. So long that, just when I thought he wouldn't speak again, he suddenly let out a very light laugh. In that smile, something seemed to shatter completely. That's good, he said. Chapter 10. Elias rarely appeared in front of me again. Sophia asked twice, where's Uncle? And I told her Uncle was busy. She went, oh, then turned around and went to play with her new puzzle. I found a new daycare. It was newly opened. The facilities were excellent, and the grounds were spacious. Most importantly, the fees were not high, but the childcare hours were long, and on weekends they even organized outdoor activities for the children to run wild. Sophia liked it very much. Every day when she came home, she would chatter away about which new friend she had made, which teacher had helped them plant little cherry tomatoes. My mother also went back to my hometown to recover. When we video called, her complexion looked much better, and she reminded me not to work myself too hard. I still worked very hard. I took on more manuscripts, and on weekends I still taught substitute classes at the training center. The numbers in my bank account kept growing, which was reassuring. At night, before going to sleep, Sophia always wanted me to tell her about which little monsters mommy defeated today. She imagined the setbacks in my communication with editors, and even the plans at work that needed revisions, as levels I had to beat. I would pick some of them and turn them all into little stories. Her eyes would sparkle as she listened, and in the end, she would always wrap her little arms tightly around my neck. Mommy is amazing, full of pure admiration, until that Saturday afternoon, when I went to pick Sophia up from daycare. The activities had just ended, and the children were saying goodbye to their teachers at the entrance. One of the program directors was seeing several parents out and standing under the porch saying something. A little of the director's voice drifted over on the wind. She was answering parents' questions about the safety rules for outdoor activities. The director reassured the parents, saying that the principal valued these matters the most. So the teachers were all very cautious and careful as well. My steps paused for a moment. Sophia had already come over and taken my hand. Mommy, don't lose me. Holding her hand, I walked to the entrance. Beside the bright glass door, there was actually a promotional poster. I rarely paid attention to it, but I saw that on one corner of the poster, the founder's name was printed. Very, very small. So small that almost no one would bother to look closely. Sophia swung my hand. Mommy, what time are we coming tomorrow? Still 3:30. Then can we go get ice cream now? Okay. At the new ice cream shop on the corner, they had our favorite pistachio flavor today. After eating our ice cream, we went back home, had dinner, went to sleep, and it was another new day. Life went on as always. Chapter 11. Bonus, Elias's perspective. The first time I met Julia was at a private art exhibition. She was standing in front of a painting, explaining it fluently in French to a couple. Her profile was calm, her voice clear and gentle. Like a spring stream, sunlight poured in from the high windows, outlining her whole figure with a soft, fuzzy rim of light. At that moment, something inside me stirred very lightly. I knew I had to get to know her. That was easy. I had my assistant contact her and ask whether she could take on some more translation work. The pay was 3 times the market rate. As expected, she accepted. I actually speak French, but I still kept her by my side, having her repeat languages I had already understood. We got together very quickly. I took her to many places and bought her everything that might make her look twice. At first, she didn't want to accept it, but later she gradually got used to it. Yet the light in her eyes never changed, clear, curious, carrying a bit of cautious gratitude. When my father found out that I had rejected the arranged marriage because of her, he smashed a teacup at my feet. "That woman you're keeping outside." He pointed at my nose. "Don't even think about letting her touch the doorstep of this family." I didn't care. Back then, I was young and full of arrogance, feeling that I could throw the whole world behind me, let alone some so-called status. I liked her, and that was enough. As for whether my family accepted it, that was their business. Until I brought her to meet Nicole, I knew what that gathering meant, and yet I still took her there, subconsciously. I wanted to see whether that would make her cling to me even more. I knew those people had said very excessive things to her, but when I caught sight of her pale face, that faint irritation in my heart turned into a subtle unease. And yet the most hurtful sentence of all was the one I said to her in the car. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew it was bad. I saw the last faint bit of light in her eyes go out completely. The day she came to pack up her things, I sat in the living room like a prisoner waiting for judgment. I wanted to stop her, wanted to say that I hadn't meant it that way, wanted to tell her I would never speak so recklessly again. But that silent arrogance was like a high wall, pinning me in place. As I watched her drag her suitcase away without looking back, there was only one thought in my mind: she'll come back. I thought she was just having a temper tantrum. I thought she couldn't leave the privileged life I had given her. But no matter what method I used, I was never able to contact her again. Only then did I suddenly realize that her leaving was not out of anger, but because her heart had died. For the first time, I felt a panic so intense it spun out of control. Later, after many twists and turns, I learned that she had gone back to her hometown and had even started meeting someone new. I could no longer sit still. I drove to the residential compound she had rented in. The security guard mistook me for her latest boyfriend and even remarked that the last one's car wasn't as good as mine. The last one? So she was in a relationship. I drank a little. At first, I had wanted to leave, but I turned back and waited in front of her door for an entire afternoon. That night, I saw her come back from outside, talking on the phone as she walked. There was a relaxed, gentle smile on her face, and in a soft voice she was discussing with the person on the other end where to go eat fish that weekend. That smile was not for me. That tenderness was not for me. Jealousy instantly wrapped around my heart, squeezing so tightly that I could barely breathe. And yet I still put on my most generous act, saying I would let her go and wait for her to have her fun and come back on her own. The truth was that I knew perfectly well that her choice had long since stopped being mine to decide. So I used the excuse of being drunk and stayed, refusing to leave. When I woke up, daylight was already bright, and the room was empty. Only her lingering scent remained in the air. This time, she had vanished from my world completely. For 5 whole years. Over those 5 years, the thought that she'll come back changed from certainty to doubt, and finally became a stubborn delusion. But she really did come back, holding a little girl's hand, walking past my car. In that moment, all the blood in my body rushed to my head. She's ours. She must be ours. That thought was so strong that it drowned out every other doubt. I pushed directly into their lives and settled them under my watch. I gave Sophia everything she might like and tried to be a good father, even if Sophia's mother still seemed not to love me. But I told myself this was responsibility. Besides, only I knew this. When I crouched down and looked into Sophia's sparkling eyes, when I heard her call me uncle, when she hugged that Bichon Frise and pushed it into my arms, some dry, cracked corner inside me was quietly being soaked through. If only I hadn't done that test. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and stare into the darkness, thinking that, if I hadn't done that test, the illusion of a family of 3 could have gone on forever. Or at least, In Julia's eyes, I could have kept playing the role of the benefactor, but I knew that deceiving myself was useless. Sophia would grow up day by day, and she would look more and more like her real father. That Pablo I heard about from Julia's mother, the gentle, considerate man who would never say hurtful things to her. When Julia's mother spoke of him, there was real fondness and regret in her eyes. At that moment, I suddenly realized something with painful clarity. In a place where I could not see, Julia had truly, genuinely been loved well by someone. That understanding was harder for me to bear than any fact. It was like a needle moving along my veins, never finding a wound, yet bringing a belated sting everywhere it passed. Pablo and Julia's child is already 5 years old. I am now 32. It has been nearly 9 years since I first met Julia at that art exhibition. 9 years. 9 years? 9 years. I will probably be trapped for a very long time. But so what? Some cages are walls built by your own hands.